shoulder. That's it, yeah. Every time, baby. Every time. I know how to do it.
Smile!
Thank you so much for sticking around for this Photoshop tutorial. As you can see, this is the image we'll be processing today. On screen is the final product, and we had such an amazing time shooting at Cocolea. We spent most of the time upstairs that we kind of used up all our allocated time, and didn't quite spend as much time as would like to downstairs. There was a whole bunch of areas we missed out on, but hopefully next time when we go down there, we'll spend a bit of time shooting downstairs and we'll have a whole bunch of new images. So let's go into the original raw image, and I'm going to close up this particular finished product here. Let's head over to Bridge, Adobe Bridge, open up the raw file, and head over to our adjustment panels there. First I'm going to do some lens correction, remove the chromatic aberrations there, and also enable profile corrections, which basically automatically selects which type of camera I used and also the lens. This particular case I used my Pentax 645Z and the 55mm prime lens with that camera. Then head over to our little two pyramids there, which are our detail, our sharpening, and I'll punch that up to 60. Then over to our basic settings, and the first thing I do is I automatically adjust the white balance to auto, and that selects my my colors, and also automatically just adjust the white balance. Then let's head over to exposure. It is slightly underexposed, so let's bring that up a bit, and maybe contrast as well. It'll probably go down with the contrast. Now I do slide from each end to the other just to give me an idea of what I'm actually type of results I'm getting, and also the highlights. Yeah, we'll bring that down. You can see it's bringing some of the clouds back in, and also the whites, and finally the blacks. Okay, pretty happy with that. Let's open up the image. Now that we've got our raw image up on the screen, there are a few things that I want to do before I even get into any of the skin retouching, and some of those things are like I want to fix up the horizontal line of the balustrade there. It's kind of leaning to the left, so we want to straighten that up. And also these struts here, the window struts, I want to remove them so I get a much more open window and it's not so distracting from her face. And also I want to put a cloud bank in there just to make the very plain blue area there a bit more interesting. And also what I'll do is change the color of this bed spread and kind of desaturate and kind of blends in with the bed a bit more. So let's head over to our layer menu, Control J to duplicate it, and I'll bring up the grid, and let's rotate that. So we go to Edit, Transform, Rotate, and I'm just going to use the grid as a guide to get that horizontal line straight, so which is that line there that I'm going for. And that's pretty straight now, but a couple of things I want to do. The angles of the windows are a bit off, and including that wall here. So I'm going to head over to Edit, Transform, Distort, and I'll bring that in a bit, still using the grid as a guide there, and also the same on this side. So straighten up our lines like so. And just checking to see they're all good. Yep. Hit enter to accept that and get rid of our grid again, and I'm going to flatten the image, and then I'm going to grab the selection tool here, head over and highlight this particular area like so, close up the box there, hit delete. We'll bring up our fill dialog box and make sure that's on content aware. Hit OK to accept it, and that should automatically calculate it and hopefully do a fairly good job. We've got to clean that up, that little bit up, but it's pretty good. Same on this side here, which looks pretty good other than that there. Again, hit delete key, and finally, well, almost finally, that section there. And I can see slightly there that needs a bit of work as well, so let's do that side as well while we're here. Delete again, enter, and let's work that image out. Okay, so let's head back to our layer menu, Control J to duplicate it, and I'm going to call that base. And so let's start removing these particular window panes with our selection tool first. So we've got a rough idea of where we're going to clean it up. I'm going to use, yeah, that's fine there. And highlight it there. It's straight up. And using our clone stamping tool and our Alt key to sample an area, you can then just go in and clean that section up like so. You can probably enlarge the brush if you wish to make it a little bit quicker. Now let's head over to this side. I'm going to use my pen tool in this particular case because there's a slight curve to our arm. So, and the control key when we stamp it in the middle there to move, and heading down, let's close up the selection, right click on it, make selection, and again our clone stamping tool. I'll increase the brush this time. Oops. Let's clean that up. Now what I'm going to do here is quickly check this side here. And you can see it's really sharp there. So let's go to our blur tool here. And I mean, it's fine if it's set to 100%. And just using our bracket keys to adjust that, we can then blur up the edge there so it doesn't look so sharp and fake. And probably on this side as well. Doesn't need it that much, that's fine. And let's clean up some of these reflections in the glass. This time I'll use the spot healing tool and just shrink it down. If we go straight across that line, it should automatically sort that out, which is really cool. And these reflections as well. If you go straight across that line, it automatically calculates it. If you go down it, it kind of has a bit of a hissy fit. That's pretty cool. And I kind of actually might fix up this little area here. What I'll do, I'll grab my selection tool, my pen tool, sorry. Now I do have a slight blur in the image. I have no idea, it's a bit of motion blur. I'm not sure why that happened, but that's okay. Won't notice it in the finished image. And again, I'm just right clicking on the selection there, so it creates that marching ants. Heading back to our stamp tool, clone stamp tool, and we can then just clean up these loose hairs here. Oops. There we go. Okay, I'm going to just grab the spot healing tool and just go around the image and see if it needs cleaning up anywhere else. what's happening there, but I'll get rid of that. Now let's clean up just some of these little areas. What I'm also going to do is just remove this small cloud bank here, because when we overlay the new cloud bank it will cause a slight problem, so I'm just going to mask that out. Just using the pen tool in this case, because it just happened to be the first one I grabbed. Just highlight around there like so. Right click to make a selection. Getting back to our clone tool, clone stamping tool, and just going to increase that brush size and just move in. There we go. Nice. Now, just before I put in the cloud bank, actually, I just might change the color of that blanket cover there. It's slightly distracting for me, so I'm just going to desaturate the image there. The blanket, and I do that by going to adjustment layer, going to vibrance, and adjust the vibrance right down, and also the saturation. And as you can see, it's done the whole image. So what I want to do is just make sure the mask is clicked on, Control I to invert it, and then by using our brush tool, make sure the palette selected to white. You can then go in and brush it out. Now that that cover's all sorted out, let's just quickly close down the properties box. Let's go into Adobe Bridge, and I'm going to open up the cloud image. Just double clicking on that, which will open up Camera Raw. Let's open that. And I originally shot this on my Canon 5D Mark II many years ago, and you can tell the difference in resolution between this and the Pentax. So what I'll do, I'll just drag it roughly to where I need it to be, and then I'm going to change the blending mode to multiply, which is just there, and go into our image, our edit, transform, scale. I'm going to bring it roughly to where we need it to be, like so. Hit enter to accept. And then I'm going to create a mask right there, and I'm going to name that cloud so I can keep track of it. Make sure our mask is actually highlighted, and brush tool, make sure that's because that's white, we change that to black so we can punch through it, and I'm going to roughly mask this out now. That's our very rough masking that I've done. It doesn't really need to be that perfect because right now I'm going to actually adjust the opacity of it. I'm going to knock that back down to probably just under half of that. And you can see the colors are blended in nicely and the edges aren't too bad at all. I mean, if you have to go in now, you can clean it up, but you can see there's really not that much to do here. Maybe some very faint areas there, which we can do if we want to, but I don't think there's going to be much of a difference, or you won't notice it enough to bother. But yeah, but those little things, you know, you won't even notice. And there we go. So that's our cloud bank in there as well. So we've basically got our basic image ready for the frequency separation. So what I'm going to do now is highlight the bottom layer holding the shift button, which highlights the whole lot. Control J to duplicate them. Right click, merge layers, and I'm going to call that base. Now we're going to do the layers for the frequency separation. Control J twice. We call that bottom layer there low pass, and the one above it high pass. You can call it whatever you want, but I just decided to call them that. Go to our adjustment layers at the bottom here, click on that, curves. I'm going to bring the curve down to about there, and this will be our burn layer. Control I to invert it so it hides it, and I'll call that burn. Again to our adjustment layer, curves, we'll go the opposite way. This is our dodge layer. Control I, and we'll call that dodge. Quickly save the image. Now make sure the low pass is highlighted and we deselect the high pass layer there, just so we can see what we're doing to the low pass. With the Alt button and wheel mouse, we can zoom in, just to get a close-up of what we're doing. Go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and let's bring that down to about, roughly about 4 pixels, somewhere around there on this particular resolution image. It'll vary if you're doing a much closer up shot, tighter portrait, or different type of resolution image, if it's a low or higher resolution image. But for me it's about 4. You just want to blur the skin but still be able to see the eyes and that type of thing. You don't want to go too far where it's like so. So yeah, like I said, about 4, somewhere around there will be fine. Hit OK. Let's select the high pass, go to image, apply image. Now we make sure we select the layer that's called low pass, and the blending mode is, if it's 8-bit, you need to use subtract, so you get this grayscale type texture layer there. Hit OK. Now we change the blending mode of that layer to linear light. And we're ready to do our skin retouching. Now I'm not going to get into too much detail because I have a video specifically dedicated to skin retouching. I'll put the link of that in the description just below the video, so check that out if you want something a bit more detailed. And in the meantime, I'm just going to use my clone tool, clone stamping tool, and start retouching the skin. Right, that's the basics of our skin retouching done. What I do want to do is actually lighten her face a bit because it kind of looks a bit dark overall. So just above the high pass, I'm going to add a new adjustment layer, curves, and just the same as the dodge layer there. Invert that, and I'm going to call that dodge face. And using the white brush to punch through, I'm going to lighten her face completely there. Make sure that's set at 100%. And down her neck. Alright, yeah, just clean it up a touch. Now if you hit the backslash button, you can see the mask and basically where we've masked it out. If I change that to black, I can then change that to the opacity of about 30% again. And we can blend in her neckline like so, and then adjust the opacity of the whole dodge layer there. We can knock it down to about where we like it, so it matches the rest of her body. Cool. This section's not quite looking right. I might just soften this. It's just a matter of adjusting and getting it right. There we go, it's looking good. What I want to do is highlight her eyes a little bit better. So I'm going to just add a bit more oomph to the eyeshadow there. So I'm going to do that by clicking on the high pass, make sure we add our adjustment layer just above it. Go to our color balance. Now it is a purple eyeshadow and it's kind of a bit washed out. So let's punch up the red a bit and also down to the magentas a bit. We call that purple. Control I for the mask so we hide it. And using our brush at, yeah, we'll leave it at 30%. Make sure it's white. We can then bring in some eyeshadow. There we go. And again, we can adjust the overall opacity if we wish. There we go. Okay, awesome. What I want to do now is compress these layers again. So clicking on, we can actually just do these ones. The high pass, the shift key, click the base, Control J, merge those layers, call that base. Now what I want to do is actually really highlight this dress because it's actually made out of rubber, and it's an amazing dress. So I really want to bring out the textures a bit more. So what I'm going to do is actually use Nik software for that. So head into Filters, Nik Collection, Color Effect, Pro. Make sure a tonal contrast is actually highlighted, and they're all set at about 50%, which they already are because I've used this before. Hit OK. Looking great. Now hit the mask button there. Control I to invert it. Now if we hit the backslash button once again, that'll bring up our mask. Making sure our tool is, our brush tool is white. And then we can punch through. Make sure that's at 100%. Punch through that mask. And bring out the dress. Oops. Amazing dress, but it actually weighed a ton. Quite heavy to move around in, but stunning. You can see the difference it's making already. We're really punching it up. Deselect the brush, the mask, and let's tone it down a bit because it's a bit too heavy. Probably about 80%. And you can see the difference there in the dress. It's amazing. Now what I might do is create another dodge layer, so adjustment layer, curves, and I want to create these specifically for the dress so I can highlight the dresses. So we'll call that dodge gown. Make sure our mask is highlighted. Brush tool, set at 30% again. And we can go in and just add a bit more depth to it all. I mean, dress was amazing before, but now it really punches out the texture of it. So let's deselect that. And using this tonal contrast on anything that's metallic, it looks quite amazing. And we're almost there. So let's select the dodge layer, and I'm going to create a new layer, call it Vignette. Grab the bucket fill tool, make sure the palette's on black, and stamp it right in the middle. And I'm going to adjust that down to about 30%. Create a mask. Grab our brush, change the opacity to 100. Make sure it's black because the mask is white. And then I'm going to erase out the actual model, the whole dress, and I like to start off with doing the whole model first because I want to make sure she's totally visible, and then adjust the opacity of the brush to about 30% once again, and then we can start bringing in the rest of the vignette. And I tend to avoid being like a typical vignette, which is an oval shape, and kind of make it a bit more interesting, have light all over the place. Okay, so let's compare it to our original base layer. Very quick, very easy. You can see all the metallic bed areas that we fixed up. We've got our clouds in the sky now, nice, interesting clouds. I am going to do one more thing. I'm going to add a bit of a color palette to it, or color gradient. What I need to do here is I haven't worked out an easy way of doing it, but I'm going to show you how I do it. Let's save that. Flatten the whole image first. Go to save as, and I'm going to save that as a JPEG, like so. Now heading over to my actions, this is an action that I bought of Russian World here, and I like this one because I like the tones it changes it to. So I'm going to hit play. It's going to automatically go through the process for me, like so. And I'm going to flatten that. I don't need to adjust anything else. I'm just going to flatten it like so. Then I'm going to go to File and reopen the original PSD file. Now dragging that, making sure I'm highlighted just above the vignette. Drag and drop that over. Now I have the my color graded layer there. So what I'm going to do now is actually create a mask for that as well. Zoom in there and hit our backspace button, or backslash button, sorry, which brings up our mask. It's white there, so we need to have a black brush, and we can then bring in, or rather erase out, and show the skin that's beneath it, the color of the skin. And you can see I've got the redness of the skin below the layer. Now, the reason I do this, it gives me the ability to adjust the background, the gradient of the background, plus the gradient of her skin. So if I adjust the actual overall image, I can just tone it down a touch, like so. So there's a slight thing. I can actually bring in a color gradient to her skin by double clicking on that and then adjusting the density. If I go to one end, you can see the gradients come in, it's very subtle, and to the other end it's much redder. I usually go to about 50%, so I've still got that slight reddiness to it, and that gives me a really interesting color gradient. So with and without, let's zoom out again, out, and with the color gradient. And that's our image. So don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, and hit the notifications bell, so every time I do a new video you get notified about it. Thanks very much for sticking around.